All right, today I'm gonna crack open the Traynor early 70s. This is an early model. Traynor Bass Master. Yeah, it's a Bass Master. We're gonna go fishing today. Bass Master YBA-1, not the 1A, the more complicated circuit. I just got this last night. Have not cracked it open. Just did a real quick overview of it. The owner said that, oh, but there's going to be noises in the background. We're outside. It's a lovely day. There you go. Owner said that it's been retubed, and it looks like I have the old tubes. Looks like some rubies were put in there. I'm guessing these are the boxes for the new tubes. Looks like one of the preamp tubes. Oh, yeah, flora and fauna. Wow. Hopefully I won't get attacked. But this YBA-1 is pretty sought after from the point of view. It's a pretty simple circuit. Similar to it's probably from the same line as the original Bassman / JTM 45, which is based on a Bassman. It's a 2-tube, 6 CA7 output tubes, 3 preamp tubes, very much like a Marshall 6 CA7 being equivalent to an EL34, sorta, for the most part. As a matter of fact, I think in here right now are EL34s. That's fine. Sometimes it's a matter of preference or taste. People say they sound different, but they're basically the same, functionally the same tube. Well, I've worked on a few of these similar amps, not the YBA-1 itself. I've worked on the more complicated YBA-1A, which has all kinds of flyback semiconductor stuff. It's got a fan inside of it. It runs hotter, more complicated circuit. But what's revered about this simple circuit and this simple amp, and some of the things I'm going to show you why, it's revered to be able to be, let's take a better look at the front, modified very easily, and you're going to see why in a couple of minutes. First of all, it's a simple circuit. Second of all, Traynor really designed this thing to be worked on. We'll show that with the overhead. But okay, so let me light up this cigar. Cigar. And then once we get rolling, I'm going to switch over. We'll take a look from the top down. I'll take off the cover, and we'll see what else we can find. Supposedly the amp was serviced previously. Not only are the tubes changed, but I see a 3-prong cord, a newish kind of version of one. This is not an original cord. So we'll see not only this amp and its beautiful simplicity, we'll see what was done before, and we'll talk about who serviced this. Let's take a quick look though at the back while I got this camera rolling. Let's zoom in here. Can I do that? It says, here's the nice retainer. You can see this is new. And we've got, what have we got? We've got an accessory jack, non-polarized, or maybe polarized, but it's not grounded, I should say. Serial number. We've got a circuit breaker. This is very common in Traynors. I've got a YRM1 that I rebuilt. Awesome amp. Just love that. That's probably more like a JCM 800. A little arguably more modern. It's got reverb actually and tremolo, so that kind of makes it a whole different thing. But circuit's more similar in sounding to JCM 800. This theoretically is going to sound more like a JTM 45 or maybe an original Bassman. It's actually a bass amp, right? So what else we got? We got a ground switch. We'll see what they did with that inside the amp. We got an on-off. By the way, in the front is the standby. We'll see if we keep that or not. We got an external speaker and a speaker jack. Sometimes on Traynors, you got to be careful. Sometimes the external speaker is the one you need to hook to on your speaker cabinet. And we got Dave's Sound Repair, Whippany, New Jersey. It's got a 973 area code, and it's got a date of 7/12. I'm guessing that is July 2012. So that's a good sign that if it was recapped, that there's new caps in there, and that's probably how old the tubes are. Although the guy said the tubes were newer. I don't know. We'll see. Just looking in here. You know, while we're at it, let's look in here. Let's take a look at these preamp tubes. I see the two rubies, the match set. They're EL34s. No need to take them out right now. Let's see what we get on preamp tubes. We've got a JJ ECC 83S. That's a good tube. I like those tubes. And that's new. So far, that's good. I like that. So I don't have to worry about how they are. An old Phillips. A relatively old Phillips. It's actually a 7025 12AX7. And, ooh, it's got Mullard codes on it, I believe. That's pretty cool. That could be a Mullard-made Phillips branded tube. Let me see where that made in is on that. And we've got a made in USA Sylvania. It's got to be a 12AX7, I would think. What else could it be? Doesn't say, and that's what we're going to assume. I don't think anyone would put an AT that looked like that was in maybe the phase inverter spot, so, you know, maybe someone could have been playing around with something. But yeah, this Phillips, Great Britain, Mama Luca. That's a Mullard made tube. Awesome. Okay. All right. So I think that'll end this little segment. The next thing, I'm going to go overhead shot, and I'm going to open this thing up. I'm going to talk about that. All right, cool. We're back. I'm going to go upstairs in a couple of seconds, but one thing I just wanted to do is let's look at the tubes that were replaced. Now, guy said that the technician who worked on it said the tubes are still good, but you should replace them. Who knows what that means. All right, nice. These are 6AA7s. They look like those are GE codes, right? Those dots means GE. Yeah, 6CA7. GE made it, looks like. That's cool. I'm going to test those and see how they turn out. I mean, I'm going to test them not only on my tester, but in the amp too. What the hell? I mean, you know, the best tube tester is an amp, right? Well, that's the argument. Now we have, what is the preamp tube that was pulled out? We know that one, it was replaced with a JJ. Well, this was not an original tube at any rate. So that's an Electro-Harmonics, made in Russia. Okay. Wonder what was up with that it was replaced. All right, with that all in mind, let's go upstairs. Now, the beauty of this amp, I was saying before, about it being it's designed to be worked on, is you don't actually have to take the chassis out of the amp. What you do is you take the cover off of the chassis and it sits there. These 4 screws here and unscrewed, this top comes off. I think sometimes there's actually underneath it is the schematic, which is it's easy enough. I don't need that, but that would be cool. Now, one thing about these that I found is you can unscrew these 4, and if it's never been opened in a while, it's tough to get that top off. There's screws on the side which hold the actual chassis to the rest of the frame. They may have to be loosened a little bit to give enough play to be able to lift that cover. So here we go. It's time. Got the big one out. Okay, that moves pretty easily. All right, good. We know that people have been in here before. Dave's Sound has been in here in the last 7 years. You know, there's tube replacement. We also know that seems to be a grounded plug replacement. If I remember correctly, on the previous trainers I've worked on, the YBA-1 and the YRM Reverb Master 1, I don't think they had grounded plugs. By the way, we're going to have to date this. This amp could be anywhere from late 60s to early 70s. I'm not exactly sure if this amp, the YBA-1, was replaced by the YBA-1A, or they went in conjunction with each other, or they just continued on both of those models at the same time. All right, so yeah, what I'm going to do is going to loosen the side bolts just a bit, so that there's a little bit, remove some of the tension on the sides of that cover, because I could probably jack it a little bit to get it out, but no need. And as I did that, you may have heard, you can hear it kind of release. You know, the Tolex gets stuck to the sides. I could probably let it out a little bit more. Let's give it enough play. I don't want to undo these bolts on the side. I don't want the chassis to fall down inside the cabinet here, just enough that it gives some wiggle. Yeah. There you go. And voila. And yep, as I suspect, wow. That schematic is in beautiful shape. Look at even the edges. There's no stains, hardly any staining to speak of. I mean, these things can be, sometimes they can be really wrecked up. That's awesome. That's great. Huh. All right, first thing that jumps out to me is them's are the original filter caps. Oh, another thing that jumps out to me, and similar in other trainers that I've worked on before, is that you've got a lot of real estate. You got a lot of room. So these are going to be, I'm going to replace, although the amp sounded really good when it was tested, when I was there with the guy that I bought it from. But we'll see. I mean, these are easy enough to replace. There's plenty of room to put in. These are double 40s. No big deal. There's no cap can in this amp. Those are the only filter caps, I believe. What else do we see? It's going through. Let me just take a look how this, maybe I'll zoom in a little bit. Let's zoom in. All right, that's zoomed. So doing our flyby here, let's start at one end. So this is the replacement cord. You can see it is properly grounded to a bolt in on the transformer. That looks like that is the power transformer. Yep. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's power transformer. There are the filament lines. So the first thing I look at on this is two things. Is that in my mind I've got this mnemonic I use for installing a 3-prong cord, and that is double F, double S, or fuse first, switch second, and that's referring to the hot line that comes in, which is the black on a cord such as this. I'll test that to make sure if for some reason that's not turned around. But this is, the black is the hot lead, white is neutral coming from house power. And here's the grounded third line. So this, you can see it looks like the plug, that's the auxiliary plug, is in play. I tend to take those out. We'll see how the rest is. We have off of the hot lead, we've got a line that goes to that circuit breaker. That's great. That's effectively the fuse. So we do have the fuses first, and then there is a ground switch and a death cap. And it is hooked up and it is active. It is coming off one side. What this does, this is the ground switch here. What it does is in one position, it references to ground, AC couples to ground through this capacitor, and this switch will say, oh, I'm going to do that through the hot lead, I'm going to do that through the neutral lead, and the switch here changes from that to there. That's going to be removed. This is going to be taken out of the circuit. But so nevertheless, I got a fuse first, and then the power switch, if I can see in here, goes from there. Yep. Okay, so it looks like. All right, so we got a fuse first. In this case, it's a circuit breaker, which is kind of neat. To the switch, and then to one side of the chassis, and the neutral from here is hardwired at that accessory plug to the neutral side. Okay, so I'm going to do some changes here just to test to make sure that these are in the right place, but that is mainly done correctly. But I'm going to remove that polarity circuit and that depth cap. There's no need for it, and it can be dangerous. Look it up online if you want. I won't go into all those details. But let's look from the power tubes. Looking here, it doesn't look like, let me zoom in a little further if I can. It doesn't look like these solder joints have been touched. Okay. You can see, interesting, the cathodes on the tubes are, oh, that's very interesting, are grounded at the same point on the chassis as the depth cap. And very interesting. All right. And we have pins 1 and 8 are tied together on both. So I'm going to take a look at that potentially between those two. I can set this up and install a 1 ohm resistor to do bias checking. That could be an option, and it's available to do here. Continuing down the line on the tubes, I don't see any evidence of anyone doing anything in there. That's good. And going to the circuit board, these look like screen resistors, 470 ohm. They look like they're in good shape. Yep. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about output tubes, and I was going down the line on those, and then we came back on the board to take a look at what was there. And what we see is here, we've got, it looks like these could be 2 screen resistors, 470 ohms, 10 watts. They could be feeding the screen grid from the second node on the primary, but what you'll actually see is that just this one here, coming from the cap, the filter cap, or the point at which the filter cap, this node here, is supplying. We'll go back through this. You'll see that this is a shared resistor feeding both screens. One could argue that that could be replaced and putting a 5 watt 470 screen resistor to feed these individually, but this is the way the amp was designed, and assuming the performance is good, I don't see any issues with these large cement wire round resistors, so that's good. Yeah. So let's go to the first node, is this node here. What we see here is the bridge rectifier, set up as a bridge rectifier. It is fed from the power transformer, the secondaries each side, and you can see one side feeds the B+, the first node into B+. It looks like these have been reinstalled or something has gone on. That looks like an original solder joint. These look like they may have been, I don't know, it's tough to say. There's a lot of points here, and this looks suspect. Someone ganging up resistors to probably split current at that point. We're going to have to look into that. They didn't have the right value resistor at the high enough wattage, perhaps. We'll have to take a look at that. And also, this amp here, if you look, this is the bridge rectifier, the two sides, and then you've got the ground point in these amps is actually your standby. There's an argument of whether or not that is a good setup. What ends up happening is when you lift the ground point of the bridge rectifier, you get potential imbalances on each side of the secondaries. Now, there should be no current going through the amp because there's no circuit closed. But if there's other failures and things, we'll see. I tend to not like these type of standbys, but we'll see how it goes. That's the way the amp is designed. So we continue on. Yeah, this is the first node. You can see there's a dropping resistor. This is actually a dropping resistor that goes to the second node that we already discussed, which goes to the screens. And then this is where the first node here. Okay. So then the third node is actually dropped from the first node point to the filter cap and goes into the rest of the circuit. No, it goes over here, and probably then now we're talking about the resistors. That this looks like the phase inverter coupling caps, I'm going to guess, and here are their plate load resistors. And really just going back, yeah, do I see evidence of tampering? It looks like the original resistors, even over here. No, you know what? Some of these resistors are not matched, but I don't see a whole lot of tampering. Just going back for a second here, these look like these may be cathode bypass. Oh no, there's the bias circuit right there. So we're going to have to take a look at there. Here's the reverse diode, which feeds, by the way, that kind of gives me an idea that these three diodes may have been replaced because they look different than these two. There seems to be no replacement of the bias reverse diode. And here are the filter caps in the bias circuit. Over here is probably where it feeds into, feeds back into, this is the bias point that feeds the negative bias voltage into the phase inverter. Now, you can see here there are some resistors that have been put in series. I bet you this is to adjust the bias. This would be a good point because this is where it goes to ground, to install a trim pot or a combination of a resistor and a trim pot so the bias can be adjustable. I'm almost certainly going to do that. We continue on through the phase inverter, which would be this tube. Looks like a long tail pair. Each side of this tube is being used as, for the push-pull circuit. And then just going down quickly, I don't see any, I don't see any bypass caps in any of these preamp tubes. I bet there's mods out there that implement a fat switch, which would drop in a bypass capacitor in one of the points of the preamp tubes. I haven't looked up much about the modifications on this amp, but I know it's a very popular amp to modify. And I can see why, and you can see why. This is a very simple amp. There's a lot of space to do things. Certainly there's space to recap it. So that's great. I'm well pleased. I don't see anything that was horribly done in here. These solder joints are not the greatest, but you know what? It looks like everything was done well to good functioning specs. Good. So yeah, it looks good. Oh, let's see if I can get a pot date here. Put on my hat. It's Mac, by the way. You'll probably they don't have date codes on pots. Let's see, do some of these caps have date codes? Oh, this may have a date code. 834 could be a manufacturing code. 7341. That could be. So this is a late 73 amp potentially. I don't see anything on the pots for a date. There may be some other, yeah, look at that. That diode there has 7314 on it. So does that. Yeah. That puts it about right. Do these Mallory's have a code on them? They should. But they say 54 or 91, and that can't be. There's no way that they would take a cap that old and put it in. At earliest, this is a late 60s amp. All right, I think that covers it for now. I think we're in good shape. I mean, I can take a look at the, I'm not going to pull them out, but I can take a look at the transformer. Should have a code on it. I can put, probably get a little mirror, put it underneath. Maybe I'll do that in a bit. All right. No love trying to get the date codes off of the transformer. Partially it was tough to get in there and look underneath. And also, from what I could see, using a mirror, a little mirror and a light, there weren't any codes on them that would show the dates. A couple things I just want to point out. One is this resistor here is actually hooked up to the output jack, the speaker jack. What that is designed to do is that if for some reason you have the turn on the amp without plugging it into a cabinet, it will help load the show a safer load than an open circuit infinite load on the output tubes, and designed to save your output transformer. Probably going to leave that. That's fine. It's actually a decent design, good design. The other thing is this on my StewMac little LED hat thing. You'll probably see this isn't standard. The little tiny battery holder that held 2 AA's, I think, original came with this visor. I gotta clean the glass. Jeez. Lasts about 12 minutes. I exaggerate slightly. So I went and rigged it up with 2 C batteries. I was originally going to do it with 2 D batteries. I'm glad I didn't, because it's like a neck-heavy guitar. You just it's not as comfortable, but certainly for the amount of time that I use it, at the times I use it, it's fine, and I don't have to change batteries every couple hours or so, whatever. All right, there you go.